Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Waters. I am part of the CNY Fertility, CNY Healing Arts team, and I have a special guest with me here today, Wesley Burwell. Some of you have seen our previous interview discussion about light therapy. This is a continuation of that. That one got a little cut short, so I'd like to have a little bit of a deeper dive into different kinds of light, how light therapy will benefit your endocrine system, IVF treatment plan, and overall fertility. So welcome back, Wesley Burwell.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Mine
So I know you have a lot of experience in the fertility world. Maybe you could share with us a little bit about that.
Well, besides the fact that I have a son, yes.
That helps.
And that's an interesting story in and of itself, but we can talk about that some other time. But anyways, yeah, using light therapy. I just read a study this morning, which was talking about how to primarily cleanse and activate the thyroid just by using red light therapy. So helping people get off or get out of hypothyroidism. And as I think I talked about before, your thyroid is kind of like a teeter-totter relationship to the ovaries. So if the thyroid's under-functioning or over-functioning, it's going to create an imbalance. And it usually shows up at the end of the hormonal chain, which in essence is your ovaries for females and, of course, testicles for men. And we all understand the decline as we age due to the body's lack of producing nitric oxide to facilitate just the cardiovascular system, but also just every system in your body is subject to the production and activation of nitric oxide specific. So to keep the glands themselves cleansed, detoxified, and being able to get the communication from the nervous system specific, all of this is very important. So it's kind of twofold, actually trifold, because it's actually activating the mitochondria specific to keep all the lights on in the cell and producing energy to pull off all of these functions.
So do you think of the nervous system as being in control of the endocrine system?
Yes, very much so.
How so?
Well, the brain and nervous system, you think of the brain as it's the control center, but you also have glands in the brain specific, which the higher glands, I call them, in the brain, like your pituitary, hypothalamus, and the pineal gland. Your pineal gland, they used to consider it a vestigial gland where they said it was of no use. Turns out it's actually the primary predictor of whether you're a cancer candidate or not. And it's all based on light coming into the eyes through the suprachiasmatic nucleus when you wake up in the morning, which shuts down, melatonin production, activates serotonin throughout the day. And then, of course, it reverses in the evening. So that sets the tone. It's almost like it's the pineal gland is like the microprocessor in a computer. It lays down the clock cycle, which everything else has to pay respect to. All commands, all issues for the body to run itself and govern itself is primarily light driven just from the sun. So all of these things, that sets the tone of the day, and everything else has to operate under that umbrella. So that also includes the pituitary gland, which they call the master gland, but in essence, it's not rightly so. It's more the pineal gland. So blue light.
So somebody that's been chronically stuck in fight or flight for a long time, how does that affect either the pituitary or pineal gland, do you think?
Well, one of the problems that I've seen from a clinical basis is the stress response in particular. When somebody's stressed, a stressful event occurs in a healthy person. One of the problems is your muscles in your jaw will contract automatically. Whether you clench your teeth or not is besides the point. We've done this with electromyograph to check the actual muscles when somebody is incurring stress. And so it's there. And this creates a back pressure effect specific to the carotid arteries as well as the jugular vein. So when that head repositions itself forward, because clenching and stress, what have you, the brain will just automatically reposition it to help stretch out those muscles to keep blood flow going in and out of the head. So right there, you've got a vascular problem, primarily one side driven, depending And so therefore your vascular response to the glands themselves is slowly powering down. And of course, when stress hits, now you've got a 60 to 70% reduction. And this is scientifically proven in your actual immune system function, at the back of the brain, because of course, when the head goes forward, you're now kinking this. The lymphatic system runs from the back of the head right up over top of the brain, almost like fingers, to allow it to drain itself. So if the atlas and axis are off, now you're blocking the drainage. Can you say Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or dementia? Because that's one of the precipitors. So vascular response to the brain going in and out sets that tone. Well, inside the brain, you've got the pineal gland, the master gland, they call it, the pituitary, for secreting human growth hormone, and the hypothalamus, which is in kind of like, it's half electrical and half hormonal. So it's calling the shots in relation to coordination, telling the cells when to open and take in nutrients and when to kick out waste products and carbon dioxide. So if that goes too far sideways because of that stress response, now you got a problem. And of course, at the back of the brain, you also have the control center, which is the communicative factor between the immune system as well as the nervous system. They call it psychoneuroimmunology. And so that's why when you're stuck in a state of sympathetic response, it's contracting everything. Well, contracted muscles don't allow blood supply to evacuate very well. So now you get a compounding effect. It's almost like you've got a hose that you've kinked. Now it's going to dribble out, but you got lots of pressure in the backside. So you got to relax that to allow it to open up and then evacuate. That's how the body, parasympathetic is rest, digest, and heal. And it follows that order. Just like the sympathetic goes fight. You'll choose to fight first. If you can't win, you're going to run. And if you get caught, you're going to freeze. So.
Well put. Interesting. So I think in terms of fertility and reproductive endocrinology, there's a lot of emphasis on the lower abdomen. Obviously, for women, it's the uterus and ovaries, but really it all begins here.
Right.
So I see a lot. I think everybody knows that I work with the Inlight Therapy Company. And that's the system that we use at CNY Fertility and Healing Arts. And the reason I like that system is because we have the eye mask called the face mask, because it goes over the eyes, and then we can put a pad at the back of the head. So we understand the benefits of that. But what about some of these other systems? I see a lot of things that are panels on the wall. And can you talk about that? Would that be beneficial or not so much?
Well, I just want to make one comment before we proceed. That whole clenching effect in the brain repositioning the head forward. As soon as the head goes forward, the pelvis now it'll rotate up and forward. And of course, now you've lost the curve in the neck. Now you're losing the curve in the lower back. And of course, here's where compression on those lumbar spinal nerves, which go forward in the body and provide the vascularity to the ovaries and the whole lower body, even the digestive tract. I have yet to find in my personal experience, someone who doesn't have something going on within the lower thoracic and into the lumbar, if they've got IBS, Crohn's, all of these things. And same with peripheral neuropathy. It's always that pelvis is jammed way too far forward or way too far back, because the postural can go both ways, but neither is good. So that ends up causing the lower body to be a toxic bowl. And of course, now the ovaries have to try to survive in that while they're slowly suffocating and going down. So we'll get back to that. Let's talk directly about the different light devices out there, because just like you, I've chosen to use the Inlight system because I find it's much more pronounced benefit, because I was a laser guy for years and I had great success with it. But there's 20% of the population I found, 18 to 20%, it just didn't work on. And part of that is once you get too many toxicities in there, it's almost like now you've got a lot of reflective mirrors. So when you're trying to get onto a point, the metals themselves are reflecting the light off, so you can't achieve a therapeutic dosage to activate what you're trying to pull off. And lasers, like using a key, trying to find the lock by hitting the acupuncture point or fascia release point or trigger points. And you have to know your device, the power of it. Once you get it there, you have to leave it there long enough to put the key in, turn it, and then it'll get a cascade response once you've charged it up. So that takes a lot of education in relation to understanding anatomy, but also the energetic anatomy with acupuncture points and meridians. So with light therapy, with laser specifically, we were always taught stay off the hot points, load up the low points, and that creates that counterbalance effect. It's a teeter-totter like this. So we need to add weight to this to bring it back. So light's a little different than needles, because needles you can activate a whole lot of different things. It's much more intricate what you do as opposed to laser therapy specific. So laser's great, but unfortunately, like I said, you really have to know how long to leave it on, because if you leave it on too long, you can also blow the point, which is not good. And so trying to teach somebody who's at home to use this effectively and efficiently, if they don't have a toxicity problem, because otherwise they're effectively just wasting their time. What I love about the Inlight system is every time you put it directly on the tissue, it's the same therapeutic dosage every time, all the time. Plus, by covering a higher surface area, you're getting an exaggerated or exponential response of nitric oxide release and production via all the vascularity that's underneath that. And that doesn't just stay locally. It effectively treats the body systemically. So you can't get that with laser if you've got a single point of light. And one of the other problems with most lasers is that they're monochromatic, which means one color. So if I just have a red light, I have to be very particular, because you're limited by the level of penetration you can get with red light. And it has nothing to do with power. There's so many people out there who say, oh, this is a 1 watt laser, and we super pulse it and it's going to get deeper. And it's like, no. What you're doing is that wavelength will only go so far in the tissue, because its ability to be absorbed by all the underlying tissue is just a fact you can't bypass. And so the thing is, doesn't matter how much you crank the power up. Power increase just means you've got faster saturation in that localized area. But the blood flow is always going through. So it's carting it away as fast as you're building it up. High power can do it quicker in that area, but it still is limited for penetration. And this was proven in studies years ago. And so
because of the frequency, because it's red, because of its ability to
it's wavelength specific. Yeah. It can only go so far regardless of the power. It makes no difference.
Right. I see.
You think of it as a needle. Like if it's low power, it's like putting a needle in and then slowly pushing on the syringe to saturate the area. Whereas high power can obviously do it a lot faster, but you can also blow over very easily. So, and that puts the tissue into what we call accommodation, which means your benefits will rise up, they max out, and that's when you want to remove the light. Let the body charge up and then take advantage of that. If you go too far, then it'll automatically hit the peak and then start dropping off rapidly. So then you've effectively wasted your time. And if you leave it on too long at a high power, then you start actually putting the cell tissue into almost cardiac arrest, which is what they call the biphasic dose response. So laser is very tricky to master, and I don't suggest it unless you really want to have a lot of time on your hands to be able to learn it, develop it, and use it effectively, even with low level. So, but yeah, there's a lot of trick games they talk about with super pulsing, this, that. Because if you took a 1 watt laser and put it on your skin, it'd burn a hole in you in seconds if it's continuous. They super pulse it, so it's more or less it's off more than it's on. It's only on a picosecond, which is like a twelfth of a second, and it's pulsing. They have to do that to control the heat so they don't burn a hole in you.
Wow. So what's the difference? Okay, so there's new companies coming out, new to me, and there's a lot of discussion about scalar waves and the Tesla coils, and what is this in relationship to laser?
Okay, so let's talk about the panels first. Sorry, I skipped over that part of it.
Okay.
Panel systems, of course, they're beneficial.
LED panel systems.
LED panel systems, yes. So, of course, we're getting that extra effect of producing more nitric oxide because we're covering more surface area of the body. But even in their own literature, when you look at the science or the physics behind it and the mathematics, it doesn't hold water, because they'll tell you stand within 6 inches or up to 12 inches. And they say, well, there's your therapeutic dosage. Okay, well, if you're standing too close and you stand too long, you're going to have that same effect. If you stand back too far, you only get about here. You never reach the peak. So that means the therapeutic dosage is in the top part of the bell curve, just the way it is. And so trying to treat something that is a chronic issue specific, when you've got a varying dosage, good luck with that, because it's so difficult to pull off without going into accommodation. So like light is like medicine in essence. Like you have to deliver that therapeutic window dose. Otherwise, you're just effectively wasting your time and or can cause yourself problems. Now with a panel, because it's flat, every inch you're away from the target, you're reducing the energy density, which is a necessity to achieve therapeutic dosage. It reduces by almost 2/5 to 3/5. So you got to have high power diodes and stand way back, but it's like you're not getting the same dosage because your body is curved. When you put a pad directly on it, you're getting it all the way around the knee, not just the front or the side or wherever you're standing.
Right.
So I'm not a fan of the panel systems, and the idea of standing up for 20 minutes in front of a light naked just doesn't appeal to me.
That was my issue. I mean, any chance to lie down, why wouldn't we want to do that? That's why I do like the beds, the LED beds. The Thor laser bed is really impressive.
Well, it's impressive, but at the same time, do you have room for it in your house? And
yes,
you have an extra $170,000 to have one in your house?
No, 120. The last time I checked, they probably
dropped their price. That's good.
Do have a used market. I did find one gently used for lower. And if you can afford it, I say go for it. You've always said that. If you can afford it, do it.
Yeah. Well, there's one problem with lasers because of the fact that they run at a very high heat. They incur thermal decay. So you don't know whether they're using a high-powered laser running at half power, or if it's a high-powered laser that they're running at full tilt. Because if that's the case and you're using it on a daily basis, those diodes are going to start to decay. So then your therapeutic window starts dropping off. So once again, like you have to know the device, you have to know the pieces. That's why, like with my electronics background, it's like I understand these devices intimately because we use them in industry for so many applications, as well as, in medical stuff. So, but yeah, light is great in any form, and I would never talk anybody out of it. But when it comes to laser, like I said, you got to kind of know what you're doing, or hope that the practitioner who's using it on you knows what they're doing. What I love about this device is all the science is done for you, and you have access to two to three different wavelengths, depending, because you've got the near infrared and the red. And so the two of those work in tandem as well as symbiotically to warm the tissue, which gets the cells moving and allows a deeper saturation and penetration of the red and the blue, which are mostly absorbed within the red is like within the first, 8 to 10 millimeters, which is almost a centimeter, not much. And then your blue is highly absorbed on the surface. So when you add near infrared to that, now you're getting almost double because you're warming the tissue. And as the cells start to move and bounce off each other, it's creating space to get lower. And you're leaving it on for enough 20 minutes in general to be able to activate that whole matrix of tissue from there right on down to the bone. Because the near infrared is not impeded. It goes right on down and is highly absorbed by bone, cartilage, ligaments, and activates all of that response.
Yeah.
So scalar waves, scalar waves as well as pulse magnetic. Pulse magnetic, I had systems in my clinics, and I call microcurrent therapies and pulse magnetic, I call them dirt therapies of the earth. Not to talk down about them, but when I brought them into the clinic, I found that there was a few problems that became very evident. It's like if you don't know your device and you're able to change the power and even the pulse rate frequency, there's sweet spots in there that you will work fantastic for the body. Like with microcurrent, if you know what you're doing and you have the ability to place it where you want. But that's the problem. Where an inflammation is, it has a lower impedance, which means the electricity will take that as the path almost every chance it can, which is part of the reason why it kind of works, but it doesn't necessarily resolve it. And you can also increase ATP production in some cases, they've proven it, by 400 to 500%, which is above light therapy. But good luck applying it to a specific area. And it only stays for a few seconds, and then it starts dropping off drastically. Now, pulse magnetic is a little different because it's pulsing. And of course, the iron in the hemoglobin gets flip-flopped. And it does it so rapidly that that's what produces that extra energy potential to produce nitric oxide. Problem is, you're doing it systemically. So think of the body, because we're 70-75% water and earth. So I equate it to a mason jar full of mud and water. The mud's in the bottom. So when somebody's toxic, obviously you've got too much earth in there. So now your percentage of water is a little less. But when you apply pulse magnetic, if it's the power's too high and you didn't open up the drainage pathways, the lymphatic system, it's like taking that jar and going,
yes,
and setting it back down.
Yeah.
You've just translocated everything. It's dumping it in the bloodstream. It's going to burden the liver, the kidneys, even the brain. And I've seen people who've done the therapy when they were not ready for it because they didn't have their lymphatic system open.
Yeah.
Pretty much put them almost in the hospital. In some cases, they could go because they would be like, pretty much throwing up, diarrhea, like sweating. Like it's Herxheimer reaction is no fun, AKA the healing crisis. But to me, those two words should never be in the same sentence.
Yeah, I know. It's where we need grinders and really good ways to open the lymphatic. I know.
Now, scalar waves, that's a whole different conversation.
Is that related to the Tesla coils?
Yes. And the thing is, in some cases, the problem is too many people like to slap Tesla's name on it. And I'm sure he's probably turning over at his grave in some cases.
Oh, he is,
To truly produce a scalar wave, the principle is it's like a sine wave that's doing this. You have to match the exact frequency of that wave, or not so much the wavelength, but the frequency itself. And then you have to take that and flip it 180 degrees so that now you've got two waves on a center line, which are doing this exactly in phase. They have to be, otherwise the scalar wave is not produced. This is all based off Maxwell's equations, which people kind of still scoff at, but unfortunately quantum physics proved everything that he mathematically proved correct. So when you get that, when you look at it from a 2D plane, wherever you've got the two waves doing this, it creates almost an envelope because you're expending energy in two different directions upon the same point. So now you've got a collapse of energy here where it's equal and equal, but now it goes perpendicular. So that's how scalar waves, they're longitudinal waves.
Oh.
That's how they're actually produced. So they have a very different effect specifically. Now, when you get into scalar technology, you can look up some of this stuff, but be careful. The military actually were invested into scalar weapons, where when fired at somebody, it could pretty much collapse all cellular function because the energy was so high, everything would just go into suspended animation. Not good. So I'm a little wary of some of these technologies and what they purport. But I do understand the fact that, of course, you're able to activate and produce this energy, and it can be used obviously for good or bad. But obviously, these people are utilizing it, and they're working hopefully with people who understand some of the ramifications and have looked at the biological response to these things. So I wouldn't discount it, but I'm also not jumping on the bandwagon super quick either. So. That's just kind of the
scalar limited to laser, or are there other ways to use the scalar technology?
You can produce it via microcurrent. You can produce it by light. You can produce it with any form of energy specifically. But those rules apply. You have to have two coinciding waves, which are 180 degrees out of phase, to get that collapsibility for the energy to go perpendicular. And that's how it works. You can look up Constantine Mail, and his name is K.O. And he actually replicated Tesla's work, where he had a little globe and it transmits energy, and it actually amplifies it because it actually connects into kind of almost the dimensional fabric and allows a receiver on this boat, and it starts moving. As soon as he turns the globe off, the boat stops moving. But as soon as he turns it on, it's tuned resonant frequency specific So it'll just drive around all, forever as long as that thing's on. Transmissible power. That's what Tesla's
Wow.
working on.
So how would you say that would be beneficial in healing and in particular fertility? Is there an application?
Well, of course, because like I said, if you have the ability to donate energy to physical tissue of the right wavelength / frequency, what have you, you have the ability to boost up, from an atomic level, the atoms that make up all of the tissues up to a certain point. But once again, it has to be controlled and it can't go thermal, because if it does, it can cause damage and or certain chemical reactions to go sideways. So that's why I said I kind of keep that stuff on the outside. I'm still watching it, but I've seen some phenomenal things happen with it as well. So I'm still looking it over, but yeah, I'm going to stick with what I know is good. Light therapy has over 8,100 studies on it now, and that body of research just continues to grow.
It really does. Yeah, I know. It's amazing compared to when we got involved like 20 years ago. Well, for myself, like 18 years ago. Well, how much has changed? Yeah.
There was 2,300 studies back in 2006 when I first started looking into it. And when I was looking into it to disprove it, because when somebody said to me, "Oh, you can use light therapy to cure this," I'm going, "Yeah, right." And so the more I tried to disprove it, the more the research kept smacking me in the forehead to finally it was like, "Yeah, this is no joke. This is the real thing." So that's when I kind of stepped into the arena and then started learning as much as possible. And like I said, we're 8,200 studies, I think it is, and counting. And they're seeing new applications for light therapy in, cancer research, like everything, thyroid, hormonal, everything.
I know. It's really exciting. I mean, it's what we were talking about before. What I say is, the onslaught of toxins and EMFs and 5G and all of this stuff. It's not a question of if you're going to include light into your self-care routine. It's a matter of when and what kinds.
Right.
And we need to protect ourselves in our home environment and create sacred space. And we need to protect our energy fields when we're going out in the world. And we have to raise up our overall vibration so we're not vulnerable to the onslaught of what's happening. And I do believe that we can do it. I will always subscribe to the resiliency model, no matter what they say out there. I will be resilient.
100%. Yes.
Okay, interesting. So let's go back to the thyroid and the ovaries a little bit. It pretty much is the primary system that I see. These two glands are the most affected in the world of fertility, whether you're getting ready for an egg retrieval or you're preparing to do an IUI or you're getting ready to do an IVF transfer. I'd like patients to really come away with some tangible ideas of what they can do to prepare the terrain, prepare themselves, the nervous system, and in particular, detox the ovaries is what I've been thinking a lot about. We know how to detox the liver. Is it different detoxing the ovaries?
Well, one of the key things that, as I mentioned before, with that pelvis rotating up and forward, and you've got to get rid of or turn the lights back on, in essence, from the nerve, because you got to understand the nerves govern blood flow. So if the nerve's pinched in the back, the nerve's aggravated, so it's going to respond and it'll show up directly in the cardiovascular system. So now the blood vessels, even if you're not per se psychologically stressed, once those nerves are physically compressed, then the blood vessels go and they stay that way. So now it's driving the blood in under pressure, but unfortunately it's not leaving as fast because the lymphatic system also becomes compromised, because the inguinal lymph nodes now, when the pelvis goes forward, it's blocking those off from a physiological response, which creates a flushing action through that whole area. So padding up the lower back, obviously getting those muscles relaxed, and covering the liver. Of course, it's kind of like, it touches everything in the body, and putting a pad directly over the ovaries, also the thyroid, and then calming the adrenals down, because they're kind of like your backup batteries. This is a carburetor. And the pancreas is kind of like your your blood sugar facilitator. And one of the things that I've just recently discovered too is uric acid levels. Now, of course, a lot of people go, well, uric acid, that's just relative to if you've got gout. And so doctors really don't check it. And so I was watching Dr. David Perlmutter's work, and it's impressive because he walks you through the whole aspect of, sugar regulation, how the liver works with glucose, fructose, how even when deprivation, the body will produce fructose on purpose because it's a storage mechanism. So when your uric acid levels get above 5.5, this kind of sets the tone on a blood sugar level to offset everything and puts the body more into a survivalistic state. So, and this is where it's the dividing line between where disease really starts to set in and toxification starts to occur, as opposed to bringing the body out of it. So, I've known this for years, and see, here goes back to Chinese medicine. They talk a lot about the large intestine is directly relative to energy backing up. It's kind of like the sewer of the house. If it's blocked up, it's all going to back up into the house somewhere, somehow, some way. And so large intestine is responsible for a lot of the energy disruption and backup. So your large intestine, not so much your kidneys, are responsible for uric acid entry into the bloodstream. So there's,
interesting.
Yeah, that's the direct correlation. So when the uric acid levels go high, and it doesn't mean you're going to have kidney stones and you're not going to, this, that, whatever else, but it overtaxes the kidneys and bladder via the large intestine. So wrapping the digestive system, pancreas, you're getting the pancreas and the liver if you're putting a pad across. I always tell people blue is best, directly on the skin. Blue light can actually control the function of the pancreas. There's research to back it up, which is amazing. So, and then wrapping the thyroid using the face mask, you just flip it upside down and then putting it on the adrenals to just kind of level them out. And this helps to kickstart all glandular detoxification is what we want to do. Let's clean it out and also wake up the nervous system so they can start handshaking and get real-time communication from the pituitary, pineal, what have you, hypothalamus. And then everything the lights all start to come back on. So now you're getting neurological balance, which downtrends to the glandular balance, because the brain calls the shots, but it's usually 2 steps behind when the head's forward, and it's become toxic. So
yeah, exactly. Yep. It's fascinating. So when you say blue light can control the pancreas, is that directly over the gland itself, or we have to include the eye mask to get access to the upper glands?
I don't have a complete answer on that, but from what I do know in relation to the viewing of the light over the eyes, the blue and the red, they have a bit of a canceling effect, because we know that blue light helps to increase serotonin production, suppresses melatonin. Red does the exact opposite. So if you're sitting there with your eyes open, you're getting both. Now, and people always say, oh, blue light to the eyes is deleterious. It's not good for you. Red counterbalances all the hyperoxidative effects that blue can create. Not an issue if you want to keep your eyes open. And a lot of people have utilized this successfully in treating seasonal affective disorder by keeping their eyes open while they do their session in the morning. And that's great. But a lot of cases, people have sleep issues. So as soon as you put the face mask on, you close your eyes, the blue light, 95% of it is absorbed by the eyelid because it's like 2 to 3 millimeters, thick.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the red light passes right on through, and it's directly communicating with the brain. Hence, that's why people are usually snoring in the chair within 5 minutes of putting it on them with their eyes closed.
That's a good point. I had not thought of that. That's really well put. Thank you for clarifying that, Wes. Here's the other thing. I don't believe that blue light is blue light. Nobody's going to convince me that the blue light of the screen is the same as the blue light of the sky. It's not. Well,
there's a spectrum or a margin within which is considered blue light. Now, of course, the higher you go up, the more oxidative effects you get. So 470 is pretty much the culprit. 450 to 470. In this system, they use 430, which is at the base, kind of like the lower end of the blue spectrum. So it doesn't have the hyperoxidative effects. And I've looked at these studies where they're all saying, blue light is so bad and blah, blah, blah. Well, the thing is, here's two factors that they're not looking at. First of all, they took monkeys and they kept their eyes open so they couldn't even have a blink response and shone blue light into their eyes, high intensity blue light. So of course you're going to fry their eyes. It's just common sense if you understand, what's going on. So a lot of these studies are like just, and of course it's like bad news always travels fast in the science world than it does the good
all
news.
the world. Yeah.
Right. Because it's like everyone's scared of it, blah, blah, blah. Now, there's another cofactor which people need to understand. It's like after sunset, and we are directly subject to the sun. After sunset, you want to reduce blue light entering into the eye because it's keeping the brain thinking it's daylight. See, before we became civilized, we didn't have this problem. Mm-hmm. And now, because of the fact that people are constantly on their cell phone till 2-3 o'clock in the morning, swiping right and whatever else, it's like you're getting an excess of blue light. And so your body produces enzymes throughout the day to be able to cope with that and recover it. But its production of that drastically reduces in the evening. So to continue to give yourself blue light to your eyes from a screen, what have you, you can get screen protectors or you can get yellow or red glasses, which will actually reduce that. Like I've done this with children with ADD, ADHD, and I instructed the parents, it's like, put on a blue filters, which are pretty much yellow, and their autistic child usually in the evening would get so revved up. Well, make sure you don't have daylight bulbs in your house in the evening. Have soft yellow or what have you. That helps. And then by putting that on, any excess blue they're exposed to, it brings them right down, so they're completely relaxed. And it was like, you got to be kidding me. It's like a pair of yellow glasses is calming my child down.
Right.
Well, light is the orchestrator of how active you were supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
You can't beat nature.
Right.
Man thinks they have a better idea, but no.
Yeah. Interesting. It's fascinating. It's certainly evolving body of information, and you're really helping to evolve all of it. So I appreciate that. Okay, so I'd like to just talk for a minute about actual protocol for people in the fertility world. What would be a minimum, like once a week for 20 minutes? What would be a maximum, like 3 times a day? What do you think?
Well, people who are coming into a clinic, like you said, it's all based on what's their availability. Once a week's better than nothing a week, that's for sure. And I still had success with people who, could only make it in once a week. The people obviously who came in 2 times a week, the results were much more rapid. And of course, people who came in 3 times a week and or rented a system where they could do it at home, it was like off the chart difference. So the more exposure to it you have, obviously, the faster you're along, you're going to help detoxify and then stabilize. Mm-hmm. So that becomes your new norm. You go back to your best genetic potential and maintain it. Yeah,
good point. And so what about for owners, people that own their own system? What would be the maximum you would want to do?
Well, like you said, I make it a part of my own routine. Like I get up in the morning and I put my lights on, and that's how I start my day. And so I'm mentally clear, be able to move through it. And, around 10 o'clock, it's like, I'm getting a little tired. 10:30, I like to go to bed. So, it's best, obviously, if you've got a system at home, use it like daily.
Once a day, twice a day.
But 3 times a day, 3 times a week. Yeah, you're still going to maintain a lot, and it's still great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, the key points, like as I was mentioning, if you just want to simplify it, the lower back, and even best, I have a lot of clients, if they've got some stuff that's going on and we really want to get things moving, like lying on the floor, put a pillow underneath their butt to raise the pelvis, put their legs up on the couch and working that way. Because when you put the pads on the inner groin area, you're going to get that flushing from the legs. And people with edema, prostate issues, cervical, what have you, endometriosis. This has shown phenomenal results in 20 minutes. It's like flushing that whole area. So when they stand back up, it's like, whoa. And then same with using an inversion table, you know, if you've got room for one, but you only need to go 20 degrees.
Love those.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Anything that's going to get the blood flow increased and our lymphatic flow increased. So back to what we were talking about before, the Herxheimer reaction. I've looked into quite a few different binders. Is there a favorite company or anything that you like in terms of binding out so people don't feel sick for too long?
Well, the thing is, if you're using lights, in a lot of cases, because before I was using lights extensively, what I found is like I could put somebody on a customized detox program using, you know, biofeedback, EAV to target, you know, what they need, what they don't need. And then using oral chelation agents primarily, because I'm not qualified to put a needle in somebody's arm and chelate them. And I'm not a big fan of that anyways, because unless you're getting rid of the contraction out of the side, because that's where it all stuck. I've had to actually detox people from chelation agents. So, yeah, I know it sounds ridiculous.
Because of they're structurally still stuck.
Well, the stuff would bind to it in the contracted area, but then it couldn't evacuate. So
I see.
Then the oxygen coming in would denature it, and then it would cause vascular damage. So it's like, you know, you got to be careful with this stuff. But relaxing the body, that's where the balance pad placement comes in to take that contraction out, and then chelating. Now you're doing something. So and I proved that with some of the veterans down in the U.S. where they were right full of metals, and then their blood panel would finally clear out after 3-4 chelations. And I said, but their symptoms really didn't shift that much. So I said, okay, well, are you doing relaxing that side of the body? No. So I said, okay, do that, and then just go in and have them take your blood. And a couple of them did it, and it's like their blood panel came back higher in metals than when they started. And they were like, well, where's all this coming from? The doctor was just blown away. And I said, well, it was stuck in the side of the body that it couldn't get out of.
Wow.
Yeah. And so once they did that and then went in for chelation, it's like, woof. It was like, then they cleared and their symptoms just magically disappeared.
Wow.
Yeah.
It really comes back to the basics.
Yes.
And structure. And yeah, exactly.
And lights, that's a great lights assist all mechanisms of action in relation to detoxification, cellular and neurological protection. Like it protects it against like even things such as cyanide. Like the cells will live upon exposure if they've been radiated ahead of time. So it gives the cell, boosts up its personal ability, let alone if you're putting it over the liver, which is the master detoxifier, and the kidneys specific to protect them from any type of damage. Because certain chelators can actually be, damaging to the kidneys if it's not done properly. So two of the products that I prefer to use, primarily if I'm trying to do a very soft chelation, advanced TRS is good.
Oh yeah.
Children love it because there's no taste, no flavor. You can spray it on their food or you can spray it in their mouth and you can make a game out of it. But I start them slow and slowly build it up to so many sprays based on their size. And it seems to do a great job in almost every case. So with the children I worked with ADD, ADHD, autism, things like that, you could see a huge shift in their ability to sit still, pay attention, all of these factors, and then using lights to speed up the response without putting them into a Herx reaction. It helps them to detox at a higher rate, but not allow it to translocate and protect all the organs of elimination as it's doing it. So that's one of the softest ones that I use. Now I've used other things when it comes to say mercury, cadmium, tin, lead. There's a whole host of things out there, but cilantro extract is great for binding to mercury, getting that out. Certain chlorellas, there's broken cell, open cell chlorellas. I prefer to use a certain company, Physica Energetics. They have about 5 different products, which are phenomenal for that. And some of the people who help create these products actually are masters in their field and working with children with ADD, ADHD, autism, and neurological disorders. So they help create some of these compilations. But yeah.
What about, sorry to interrupt you, but what about organic arsenic? Like organically found, like it's been tested for natural sources.
Are you meaning exposure to, or
Blood levels. I have a friend, he's got high levels of arsenic and he was tested and they called it organic arsenic. So from just normal exposure to food, water, air, soil.
yeah? There's another type of, well, the advanced TRS will assist with that because it binds to anything with a strong positive charge. But to get a little bit more aggressive with that, that's where your chlorellas will come in. You can get, like freshwater algae as well as saltwater algae can both help. But I'd be careful with the saltwater ones because of ever since Fukushima, the radiation, pretty much the largest patches on the planet were, unfortunately off the coast. So most of the stuff that they're harvesting now is semi-radioactive because, hey, lo and behold, it's actually good at even bringing that stuff down. But now you don't really want to be putting it in your body. So I kind of avoid most of that stuff and stick with the freshwater stuff.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
And then there's also other agents out there that I'm exploring, EDTA, orally taken.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to be careful because with that diet, EDTA will strip a lot of your minerals, all your metals, stuff like that. So you have to be on a specific diet because if you eat certain foods, well, then you're just going to nuke what you put in. So you have to follow a strict diet to actually get this stuff pulled. And I've got colleagues that have been having great success with pulling all different types of metals. This stuff seems to bind everything. I'm not that familiar with DMSA. And in fact, I've had to fix people that were on it, but I'm not saying it's totally bad. I honestly haven't played with it and I don't really know that many practitioners that actually utilize it. So.
Yeah,
but
interesting.
EDTA is fairly safe, but once again, if you're doing it from an IV perspective, you definitely want to make sure you're doing that balance and relaxing that side of the body so you're getting a proper cleanse and flush.
I've done it in suppositories.
Yes, I've been exploring that because we had talked about it, but I had two other people who right after I talked to you who were saying the same thing. Really? They've had phenomenal success with the suppository.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Anytime we can bypass the gut, go directly into the cells in the bloodstream, it seems to be a huge advantage because the gut is so problematic.
Yeah. And of course, suppository wise, like once again, it goes back to the whole large intestine is the energetic problem. Well, part of that's to do with there's obviously metals and stuff that are coming in from the diet. And then if you can catch them as soon as they enter the bloodstream, why not? Or it even gets into the bloodstream. Yeah. Even better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So, okay, just to wrap up here, I want to just, again, we're thinking about detoxifying the ovaries in particular, which is then going to affect the thyroid. We know light has a very direct effect on the thyroid. A lot of it is just proximity. It's more superficial, so the light frequencies can address it easily, whereas the ovaries can be quite buried below the fascial layers. Anything else that you can share with us in terms of ovarian function?
Well, with ovarian function, as I said, they're at the lower end of the chain. Because of course, procreation is not the top of the list. It's like living and surviving first and foremost. So hence that's why there's an hierarchy of the glands, I call it. Obviously the ones in the brain are the masters, pulling the puppet strings, but the thyroid is kind of like the referee between the heart and the mind. So every breath you take, it's changing function. And if it doesn't have that flexibility and adaptability, then it's what tells the adrenals to turn on. Now, when the adrenals turn on and stay on, now you're on backup batteries. You're in survival mode. So that downtrends to everything else, where now the pancreas, like digestion is going to slow down or stop. And the pancreas is kind of going, okay, what's going on up there? I need to go out into survival mode. So it's overproducing insulin. Well, by the time the liver's done processing and breaking down all the cholesterol to feed all the higher glands, there's not much left for the ovaries. So you can't just address one particular and go, everything's wonderful. I address all of them. specifically, like the lower glands, the higher glands, the thyroid, as I mentioned, the adrenals, liver, pancreas, boost them, and then the ovaries as well. That's the best strategy I've found, because I tried doing it just let's go to the ovaries because we got a problem here. And then it started getting a yo-yo effect. Like I was getting people who they're like, they start getting the sweats and, you know, a little bit of tachycardia, heart racing for a little bit, and be like, well, what's going on? Well, we just woke up the ovaries, and then the thyroid had to recalibrate itself. So it goes roller coaster a little bit, then levels out. And of course, your adrenals kick on. It's a stress response. So that's why I like to do a sweep effect, give them all some love, and they just detox and balance themselves back with the nervous system.
Good point. I like that. Give them all some love. So then there really is no hierarchy in the endocrine system. They all are equally loved.
Well, exactly. It's just they all prefer their own form of love, but they all respond to red and blue light, so, and near infrared.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Wes. I really appreciate all your time and expertise, and it's fascinating study. Yeah. Anything else?
No, not that I can think of. Once again, I could talk for hours about whatever. So
I know. It's great. You keep studying and researching and helping people, and
this day and age with all the EMF and the metals in the body, because the more metals that get into the system, the more affected by EMF you are. It's like I actually participated in a research paper with a woman in Trenton University, Magda Havas, who is kind of an authority on EMF. And we sat down and talked shop for a while. And I was explaining to her the whole aspect, because she comes more from the biological field and I come from the technology field. So it's like I sat her down and said, okay, look, this is how it acts upon metals. I said, now let's take this and put it in the body, because if the metals are there, you're slowly building an antenna network. And of course, when these waves hit the metals, they create their own magnetic flux lines. What do magnets do? They attract more, and then they stick. And then they actually, if you take a hammer and hit a steel rod, if you angle it in line with the poles, when you hit that, it can actually become magnetized. So can you.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
So light therapy actually creates, by flooding that system, it helps to create an ionization effect where now they'll pull all the electrons they needed, but then once they do, they're all negatively charged. So now you've got push, they'll disseminate and allow the body to actually get them out, and they're charged. So it's easy for the body to remove them. So light is phenomenal at pulling that off. And then of course you've got the whole nitric oxide specific, opening all the pathways and boosting the cells so that they can all clean house, get it out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, in terms of our house, like I've been doing a fair amount of research, not a ton, on how, like, what can we do if we want to minimize the effects of our router and our cell phones? Is there a company that you like, or what do you do?
The problem is most of that stuff is very expensive when you start doing shielding in your house. And funny enough, I read this article, and it's like, you know, was it government influence to get rid of lead paint in our house? Because they blamed it on, you know, certain, you know, lead poisoning from kids eating paint chips. I don't know about you, but as a kid, I don't remember licking the wall or the windows at any point in time. But just saying, but lead shield, like lead paint in the house, actually provided perfect radio shielding. Now, you're not going to find lead paint anymore, and I don't really suggest going out and looking for it. But what you can get is there's certain fabrics that are, you know, you can put around your room, whatever else. But be forewarned, it's like as soon as you step into the arena of trying to block EMF, your phone's not going to work. Your computer is not going to communicate. Like I have my house wired like to the router itself, direct point to point. So even my computer I'm on now, it's all plugged in, and I have I shut off the Wi-Fi. Now, finding a router nowadays that doesn't kick off 5G, and of course it makes me laugh because everyone's going, "Oh, 5G is dangerous." Well, guess what? they already experimented with that in your house on your router 6 years before they even put it into cell towers. So you've already been exposed. It's like reducing your exposure, period. I'm looking at new technology. Funny enough, you mentioned it. There's two companies I'm looking at, and the one, what you can do to counter, it's about counteroffensive when it comes to EMF, because we're going to live in a radio wave / Wi-Fi society. You're not going to get away from it. So best thing you can do is have something that when that stuff hits it, it transforms it into a signature that is beneficial to the body. So it's almost like you're getting a pulse magnetic, which is healthy and beneficial. Because too many people think, oh, this is bad. This is bad. No, too much of anything, even a good thing, is not good for you. Because as I was telling Magda, it's like when those metals surround it, it affects the cell's ability to open and close the gates. But once it gets inside the cell, now you've got a one-pass diode. So if a sine wave is passing through, if a cell is healthy, it has the ability to, from an atomic level, create a flip-flop. So it passes right through. It doesn't cause any issues, and it doesn't create much thermal heating. Now, if you've got too many metals, then what happens is it becomes a one-pass diode. So now you've got the positive cycle goes through, and then the other one gets blocked. Well, all that blocked energy activates the metals. They start to heat up. And that's when you got a problem, because it'll develop a big enough a charge. Now it interferes with nerve communication, and it aggravates the nervous system, and it binds to it. So it has such a cascading effect. So once I explained that to her, she was like, oh my God. She goes, yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing in the lab. I said, well, so I just explained it to her. We actually contributed to a book, Integrative Medicine book with Dr. Aruna Bakru. But anyways, we did a whole section, and she did a section, I did a section.
So something like this, like I bought one of these little diode, protection diode. Would that be similar to what you're talking about?
Right, because the thing is, what you want to do is have something with that when it's why the Wi-Fi is conducting as it's hitting it.
Yeah,
it's actually transforming it and emitting something that's beneficial to you. So it creates a counter effect, and that's kind of what makes sense. Yeah, and same with light therapy. Now, when it comes to shielding, if you're looking at getting shielding for, say, a room or your bed, there's actual paint that actually will block a lot of that stuff. And there's also like radio shielding stuff that you can get, like a canopy over your bed. And of course, if you're on ground level, you don't need to go put one under. But if you're above, then obviously you got to put one underneath the bed. And it can almost be like a miniature Faraday cage. But when you're in there, if you think you can be on your phone and scrolling, forget it.
No, I mean, hopefully that's not what we're doing in bed. I mean,
it's amazing when you have that, how well you sleep. It's almost like, because when you're being exposed to it, the body's like, it's almost like you're holding your breath. But as soon as you get into that environment, it's like, wow.
I'm going to look into that.
Yeah. There's a guy in, his name is Rob Metzinger, and he is in, I think his business is in Guelph, but he's just, what's the name of that town? I used to drive through it. It's just off of Highway 401 going south into Waterdown. Starts with an M. Morristown. That's where he actually lives, but he's an authority on EMF, and he teaches people all over the world. He goes into businesses, corporations, and they do radio testing, checking for dirty electricity, this, that, and he's taught people all over the world. And he's a big authority on this, and he sells the stuff on his website. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but his name is Rob Metzinger, Metzinger, Robert. And I can't remember the name of his business off the top of my head, but he has access to all of this stuff. And most of it comes from, I believe, Switzerland. It's not cheap stuff, but when it comes to your health, like,
I know,
expenses is,
I know, health is unfortunately becoming for the wealthy. And
Yeah.
You know, it's what you and I have invested in for all of my adult life, eating well, exercising. All my money has gone into nutrition, the right supplements, light therapy devices,
Yep.
trying everything new in order to minimize the damage because we have no choice. And most of the people I see in the clinic regret that. Now they're in their 50s, and what they did from 20 to 50 or 30 to 50 is not that. And it's harder to reverse. And so we want to prevent disease. And that is the history of Chinese medicine, as we know. It's all about prevention and maintaining balance. And we have to take it up a notch.
Yeah, it's not the same world, even from the time, of when I was born in the 1970 on. Like, it's just been a progressively more and more radio filled / toxicity filled world. Like, the EWG, every year they're introducing even more chemical compounds that are toxic to people. 70% of what gets on your skin, all those compounds out there, can go into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part. It's like, we just don't know. And
I
who
know.
knows what they're doing with their food and everything else. So yeah,
I
you
know.
have to pretty much incorporate the strategy of keeping the metals out and, looking after yourself.
Yeah.
Necessity.
Yes. Creating a sacred space in your house if you can, and working on your emotions. I mean, on the other hand, we know we could have a whole nother conversation about that. What truly ages people is their negativity, the true addiction.
Yeah. Well, fear and anger create contraction in the body. And it's like, because anger usually is part of the fight mechanism. When confronted, you want to fight, you get angry. Obviously, it shunts all the blood flow to your arms for the most part. And, so you're ready to go. But fear, it just puts the whole body into a state of shock, and your immune system goes right out the door with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like you're creating that contraction. So it's like, do your meditations, do your lights, all these things, keep as relaxed as possible. And I know it's hard in this day and age because it's like you got so much stuff coming at you, but shut off your Instagram and Facebook for a weekend and watch how much more calm and relaxed you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for as much bad news there is, we have equal, if not more, good news. We just don't hear about it. So you have to find it and start creating it in your life.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much, Wes. We look forward to seeing you in Florida. I think you'll be in Sarasota this month, right?
Hoping to be, yes.
Okay, good. So we will post and let everybody know where you're going to be in a couple of weeks, and maybe they can come join you and meet you there.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Talk to you again.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.